Hi, I'm Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Tales from the Silence, no other than Mr. James Bow.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to Book 101, Mr. James, and can you please introduce more about yourself?
Well, my name is James Bow. I'm the author of about six novels, including most recently my first anthology, Tales from the Silence. I'm published through Shadow Pop Press and Endless Sky Books. I've been a writer for the past 20 years, but in my day job, I do communications officer work, press releases, that sort of thing. So Um, I've been really privileged to find a day job in what I love to do, which is to write.
Definitely. Mr. James Bow, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. So what does Tales from the Silence suggest about the power of unspoken words?
Tales from the Silence is a collaborative anthology. There are 10 authors there are 11 authors in total, including myself, and we were writing stories about um, a period in future history. The concept of Tales from the Silence and the companion YASF book, The Sunrunners, is that the Earth has not did not solve climate change. It just pushed back the consequences to the point where they're able to build colonies throughout the inner solar system until environmental catastrophe catches up and the Earth goes silent. The supply shuttles stop coming, and so Earth's spaceborne children are on their own. So during this period, which they call the Silence, we have a series of short stories dealing with the colonies on Mercury, Venus, Mars, the asteroid belt, Jupiter's moons, and how they respond to their sudden isolation and and their challenges of survival, given that they weren't all of them self sufficient when it happened. So we have stories set on all the inner colonies, inner solar system colonies, and also on Earth itself as it goes through its new dark age.
So, Mr. James, how can silence serve as storyteller in a literature or real life?
Well, the Tales from the Silence, I think, has features a number of themes about survival and also recovery from considerable catastrophe. Um, I do find online, given the politics that are happening now, uh, a lot of people, it's a lot. Some authors are almost feeling guilty about like the world's on fire and I have a book out. So, but I think the power of science fiction is that it shows you that it shows that there is a future. It might not be easy. It might require some terrible hard work, but there is still a future that we can look forward to and possibly fight for. And that covers some of the themes of the story in Tales from the Silence as uh, these colonies deal with this new and unexpected challenge, and as the Earth claws its way out of the catastrophe that silenced it. Yes.
What emotions are often hidden within silence?
Within silence, that's a good question. Well, I mean, in the silence, I mean, the deep answer is I think in silence you can have some tremendous emotions. It, there is, you can be so overwhelmed with emotion that you don't respond, but you are still feeling that those emotions are still going on underneath, and when they do come out, they can come out in powerful ways. Um, when you relate it to these stories, um, you know, people sort of deal with, you know, people deal with the sudden change, the calamity in their own way, with sort of responses like akin to grief and that gradually builds determination. One of the stories in the Tales from the Silence is set on Earth. It's called After the Apocalypse in Musini, and the concept of it is there is the town of Moosonee, which is a real place. It's on James Bay. Its only connection with the rest of Ontario is the rail line that eventually goes to Toronto. And when the catastrophe hits, they get isolated. They lose all contact with the South, but they're a fairly self-sufficient community. They managed to eke out an existence for 26 years. So they, as far as they're concerned, the world has gone silent around them, and so they move on with their lives until 26 years later, a train comes up from Toronto, and people, soldiers hop off, and somebody comes up and says, "We're from the government. We're here to help." It's like, how do you respond to you've been alone and self sufficient for 26 years? Do you accept this help from the South or what? So yeah.
So, Mr. James, how does silence shape the way characters interact in a story?
Well, um, I would say in throughout the book, um, you know, characters interact with they interact with. Let me start over on this. I think
Go
throughout the
ahead.
book, characters deal with these sudden changes uh, by you know, like they turn to the people they trust, or they if they try to, or they fight for what's important for them, um, and they just they focus on their families, and try to protect what they can to help themselves. Uh, I think that's I think a natural response to a sort of a calamity where people realize help isn't coming. Um, and another theme I think that I do follow through on in Tales from the Silence and in the Sunrunners is the concept of the last good day, which I, people, these characters sort of like have look back on this one day where it was where everything was fine until it all went to hell. And I explore some aspects of that, but I also sort of punch back against that by saying that's an act of privilege. Because if we were really paying attention, there was no last good day. The roots of what happened stretch back months, years, decades, and we're building. And you just were in such a privileged position. You didn't take the time to notice until you couldn't not notice it. And so that's sort of some of the themes that some of the things that the stories deal with.
Very well said, Mr. James. Very well said. So, can silence be louder than words in a certain solutions? Why or why not?
I would say so. The person who reacts loudly sometimes just does not react. Does not actually react productively. Um, you respond without thinking, and you that allows mistakes to come in. The person who is silent and person who is silent is typically somebody who is watching and is thinking and is planning their next step. So, there's the phrase, keep your powder dry. You may the inclination may be to react suddenly, strongly, and loudly, but the person who's silent is going to react at the right time, we hope, and do far more damage to whatever is threatening them. Um, and yeah, so
Certainly. So,
yeah.
how does a character's silence reveal more about their personality?
Well, if you can get into the characters' heads, um, they will do a lot more. They typically do a lot more thinking. The effective ones do a lot more thinking than they do talking. So if they get into their heads, you can certainly sort of see their thought processes. And while the people around them may think they're not doing anything, they're really getting more in tune with the world and getting ready for their response.
So, in what way or in what ways can silence be a form of resistance or defiance?
Well, there have been a number of examples of um, effective pacifist resistance. I mean, Gandhi is took the British out of India with a lot of that. In Turkey recently, I believe there were protests where people just showed up and they didn't shout, they didn't yell, they didn't clap, they just took the public square and they just stood there, didn't do anything, and that just freaked the police out because I mean, they weren't doing anything, but they were very clearly there. They were very clearly had a political, they had a political stance that they were acting on, and you know, the police could do nothing about that without, you without creating horrible images to show to the rest of the world. So there is, I feel, we've seen plenty of examples of effective silence used in terms of resistance.
So, how do different culture interpret the meaning of silence in storytelling?
Well, I couldn't speak to any other cultures personally. My own experience is limited, but I do think in storytelling, you hear the the calm before the storm. That would be silence. You hear things like the person that is that hears the threat first, but he or she hears it in what seems to be total silence until it comes up, till sort of whatever the threatening noise is that sort of comes to attention. So there's plenty of great examples of the use of silence in terms of um, drawing out the mystery, uh, expanding the sense of eeriness and of threat, and there's a lot of fun effects that you can certainly do with that. It can be a challenge to do that in writing. You're going to be writing whole lot of words that talks about what the silence is doing, but we writers can work around that, and certainly, I mean, directors and screen and directors and screenwriters can do a lot of great things with silence in film and television.
So, Mr. Games, what are some examples of characters who communicate best through silence?
Well, uh, I'm thinking, there's the old trope of the silent warrior, who He doesn't say much. He just when he does when he or she does move, they move with great intent and are almost unstoppable. um, it goes back to the people who make a lot of noise are actually, I mean, the full phrase, their bark is worse than their bite. You have to watch out for the ones that not not making a big show of themselves and are going to, and when they do strike, you're not going to see it, or you're not going to hear it coming.
So, Mr. James, what would be your advice for those people out there who want to write their short stories?
Well, the best thing you can do with writing to get into writing is to just write. Find any excuse you can to do it. There are plenty of you can just you write your own tales for whatever audience you can find. I do recommend things like fan fiction. If you have a series, book series, TV series, film series that you love, you can write your stories set in those universes. And the important thing about that is you have a ready-made audience of fans who will happily read your work and give you constructive feedback and generally respond to you and give you a reason to write. And once you have that for once you have that reason to write, you will write. And once you write, you will write a story. Once you have one story, the second one becomes a lot easier. Um, you can go through. You can take any sort of creative writing classes. They certainly help, but I think the one thing that everybody has to do if they want to write is to just write and to by hook or by crook find any way they can to get words on a page and put that story together. The first, and to keep going after that.
Certainly. So, what are your short term and long term goals in writing?
Well, I want to keep on going, of course. I've been my past 3 months have been focused on promoting Tales from the Silence and the Sunrunners, and my publisher Shadowpaw Press is re-releasing my urban fantasy of the Night Girl in August of this year. Um, I have a third book, a companion novel called The Cloud Riders, uh, which I'm hoping my publisher will publish in 2026 or 2027. It's set on the colonies of Venus and Mars, and I have possibly a sort of a near future science fiction story called The Curator of Forgotten Things about what people do when all the jobs are automated and how they sort of come to live with that. So, my short and long term goals are about the same thing to keep on writing, to pay, the short term goals are to pay the bills. My long term goals are to finish some novels and to get the words out there and to enjoy myself while doing it. I should mention I'm also putting out a week by week a chapter of my novel that got away called The Dream King's Daughter on my blog at bojamesbow.ca. That's free for anybody to read, so that's my immediate goal. I'm at chapter 7 now, and there's 4 more to go. So people can head on over and get some free fiction and check it out.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. James, and looking forward for more books to come.
Thank you.
So, what are the some common symbols of silence in storytelling?
Um, Sorry, I missed that. You sort of froze up a bit. Could you repeat that question?
Yes, definitely. What are some common symbols of silence in storytelling?
Common symbols of silence and storytelling. Well, a lot of it I think has to do with location. Um, where silence is expected and where silence would be particularly strange or eerie. I mean, people can go into nature, which, while not entirely silent, is certainly peaceful, and that would certainly influence a story in terms of having a character find their inner peace and possibly restore some of their inner balance and prepare them for what's to come ahead. Silence could also be in unexpected places, like if you were to be find yourself in the middle of a big city, and there's nobody around, no cars, no traffic. That silence will be as eerie as all heck because obviously something has happened, and you need to know what, and the and the mystery just builds from there. Um, you could also have uh, the silence as an immediate effect after a traumatic event. I mean, I've seen plenty of cases where after a bomb goes off, the music and the sound just cuts out, and everything goes slow motion. But you hear sort of like it's as if your eardrums have been punctured and you've gone temporarily deaf, and that's an effective use of silence, just a shock to the system. And yeah, so that's those are just some of the things that you can use.
So, Mr. James, in what ways can silence represent wisdom or enlightenment?
Silence and wisdom would certainly come with being with the equating yourself with the science of nature. I feel um, it's certainly like the opposite of shouting eureka. That's the
I
yeah
found that.
yeah. So yeah, if you've found the answer, sometimes it stuns you into silence. Just how many times have people been talking through their thought processes and they hit that one point where they just stop, and then they've got it. I think that's a cool little motif.
Definitely. I found it. I found the secret of the
Yeah.
universe. So, Mr. James, before we wrap up our discussion, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, Food 101, in its fifth season, People
Right.
fifth season, with my co-host, one of the specialty chef in one of the five-star hotel in downtown Toronto, Chef
Nice.
Alessandro Panattoni. So please do listen to our latest episode. We are reading our letter senders all over the world. Food 101, people. So what lessons can be learned from Tales from the Silence?
I think the big lesson about Tales from the Silence is how we can survive calamity, and at the same time how we have to resist how we how I think we have to resist tyranny because that can sometimes come after calamity. So it's a book about um, recovery and resistance, and I think that's the best way to put it.
Mr. James Bow, thank you so much for sharing your talents to the world. We are looking forward for more empowering books like this. So can you please invite our listeners to support all your books?
Thank you. Yeah, check me out on bojamesbow.ca, and see all of my books there and all of my writings, and I'll meet you there.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. James Bow because if you support him, as I said, more empowering books to come. So, Mr. James, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
More to come, people. See you soon. So, Mr. James, if you want to talk about our your